Let's talk about Dead Reckoning, a 4X game about pirates. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald. In this episode, we are going to talk about Dead Reckoning, which is a 4X board game. Now, what does the 4X mean when we're talking about board games? Explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate are the 4X's. This is a game by AEG called Dead Reckoning. Now, Dead Reckoning is a game for between 1 and 4 players. You can play this game with kids age 14 and up, so it's only going to be the teenagers for this one. It is quite complicated, and games take a couple of hours to play. Let's take a deeper first look at Dead Reckoning by AEG. Here's part of the board for Dead Reckoning. Now, why do I say that this is a first look at Dead Reckoning for me? Well, the reason for that is this. I tested positive for COVID last week, and so none of my friends could come over and play a game. I had to find something that I hadn't talked about yet that did have a solo mode, so I played this one all by myself, which is why I say this is going to be more like first impressions, even though this is an older game. This is a mid to heavy game in terms of its complexity, and the way that you win Dead Reckoning is by earning the most coins at the end of the game. There are lots of ways that you can earn coins. You can earn them by producing on islands. In fact, you're going to earn a lot of coins by producing on islands, potentially. You can plunder coins by attacking ships, but you're also going to be earning these achievements at the top of the board. So you might, if you win 4 battles, you're going to be able to place an achievement here. That's going to earn you 5 points at the end of the game. So there are some achievements, and that's how you determine the end of the game, is once a player has achieved a certain number of these goals here at the top of the board. I'm going to try to keep this as a quick overview because, as I said, this is a first impression. I've only played the game in solo mode, and so I'd want to play it more often, a few more times with some other players in order to kind of figure out, more deep observations, I guess, about the game. If you would like to see a more in-depth overview of this one, leave a comment in the comment section below the video. But what you're doing in this game is you're moving around this board. You're exploring these ocean tiles that are potentially going to have islands on them. You're trying to take control of those islands so that you can produce cargo and coins, and you're going to be attacking merchant vessels or other ships potentially in order to earn those achievements or to get some plunder. You take actions in this game by playing cards. So you've got these cards and they're in sleeves. You know that I'm not a guy who usually sleeves his cards, but in this game the sleeves are very important and they came with the game. You've got that deck of cards. That's your crew. That's going to be your crew throughout the entire game. And at the beginning of the game, they're going to look something like this. You're going to start with 4 cards in your hand. You're allowed to draw 4 cards at the end of each turn. Some control of some islands will allow you to draw an extra card, but you've got a maximum hand size of 6. You can hold on to cards. You don't have to play them all on your turn, but you can play as many as you have in your hand. So the icons at the bottom of the cards are going to determine which actions you're allowed to take. So the captain is going to allow you to set sail. So you've got one sail icon here that allows you to set sail. You've got a couple of those on your ship as well. You might be placing cargo in your warehouse or placing influence cubes onto one of those islands. You can see that I've done that here. And the cards at the beginning of the game aren't very powerful, but you never change out your crew. This is what they're always going to look like, except eventually you do upgrade them. So here are a couple of gunners that kind of I wound up with later in the game, in that solo game that I played. These ones have been upgraded. So you're buying these advancements off of the board on these ocean tiles. Each one is always going to have an advancement on it. You purchase that, you slot it into the sleeve so that your crew member is eventually going to have not just one row at the bottom, but 4 different rows of skills. The other thing you can do with these cards is level up your crew. Down here, this is level 1. So this is the very most basic action that this crew member could take. But at the end of your turn, you level up a card in your hand. So each turn, you're going to be taking out this card in the back and flipping it in some way in order to level up your crew member and give them more powerful actions. Once the regular crew members are leveled up to level 2, they can start repairing your ship. Once the bosun is at level 2, he can upgrade your ship And here's a level 3 buccaneer, and he can place 3 influence cubes on an island instead of just one. You take actions by playing cards from your hand, and there are good reasons maybe you want to hang on to a card so that it can be one of the ones that you level up later. You're going to produce resources on islands. One of the actions that you can take, the purser's action, will allow you to produce on an island, but the resource stays on that island until you pick it up and put it in your hold. It can be stolen by another player if they take over that island. You take over an island by having the majority of the cubes that are here on the side. So right now I've got 3 out of 4, and if somebody came over here and put their own 3 cubes, they'd replace 2 of mine, and then they would be in control here of this island. They could take my barrels away from me. Each player is going to have a shipboard like this. So the blue player, their ship is called the Widowmaker. It has some icons on it. So this means that in combat, you've got one cannon. If you want to move, you've got 2 sails that will allow you to move. But you can upgrade each of these 4 areas on your ship. You've got one of your crew members, eventually, once he's leveled up, can start to add additional cargo space, additional sails, maybe additional cannons on here. Now, another thing that's interesting, though, as you pick up cargo, so if I'm at this island, if I'm the blue player, and I'm at this island here where I've placed the ship, I can pick up these barrels and put them here in my cargo hold, but I can't use the icons on my player board if there is cargo in that space. So now, instead of having, I would have had 3 sails, now I only have 1 because there's cargo in these other holds. I can, at any point during my turn or during another player's turn, as long as I'm not in the middle of combat, I can move things around. I can move these barrels over. This has space for 2 things in this cargo hold, so I'll lose a cannon, but I'll get that sail back. That's not really very helpful. I might want to move everything over here so that only 1 sail is covered up. This has space for 4, so I can't even move everything over there because this 1 box is equivalent to 3 barrels of cargo. So I may then have to jettison one of these barrels if I want to use as many of these icons as possible and throw it into the ocean. In addition to their shipboard, each player is also going to have their own little warehouse. So you've got this little circle. You can keep it at the top of the board if you wanted to, but you've got this little circle that you might keep beside your player board. And you can move cargo to and from an island to your ship, from your ship to your warehouse. And so you might store things here in your warehouse instead of on your ship. But if you want to buy these upgrades, you need to spend cargo that's on your ship. So I still have 4 cargo left here because that box represents 3. So I could, if my ship was on this space, buy this advancement and put it into one of my card sleeves at the end of my turn. Combat in this game doesn't involve any dice, but there is a little bit of randomness involved. So as you saw on that shipboard, by default, each player is only going to have 1 cannon on their ship, but they can upgrade that ship and earn more cannons. Some of your cards can be upgraded to give you more cannons as well. So the gunner will give you some cannons and eventually give you some extra battle abilities. I've upgraded this one that gives me all kinds of cannons and some extra things that I can do during a battle. Once combat starts, the attacker is going to look at all of the cannon icons that they have on the cards they've played and on their ship, and that's how many cubes they're going to get to drop into this. It's almost like a dice tower. It's more of a cube tower. If you're attacking an opponent's ship, that opponent can also play cards from their hands. So they've got the cannon icons on their ship, and they can, before the battle starts, they can juggle their cargo around to make sure they have as many cannons as possible. They can throw their cargo into the ocean too and get rid of it in order to have more cannons. And then the opposing player can play some cards if they happen to have cards in their hand that give them some extra cannon icons. Then you're going to, once you've got all of the cubes, you drop them into this tower. The winner of a battle is going to be determined by the number of crowns that their cubes land in. So I've got one here. Blue has 2 crowns. They're going to win the battle, but you could also potentially take some damage to your ship, even if you're the winner. The loser may get some cargo or some gold, even though they didn't win the battle. There is a special space in the center. If you happen to get a cube into this little middle rectangle, This is a great one. This is an exploding damage space. And so you take that cube out, you grab another cube, and you drop both of those cubes in. So you can do more and more and more damage or get more and more plunder as you're playing through that battle. Once everything's determined and all the cubes have been dropped and both players pass because they can't take any more actions, you determine the winner by looking at the number of crowns that each player in the battle has won. What skills are you practicing when you play a game of Dead Reckoning? Well, this is a game that places heavy demands on the executive functioning skills. These are the skills and behaviors that you need to work towards a goal. Planning ahead, evaluating your progress, being organized in your approach to things are all examples of executive functioning skills. And you do have to plan, how are you going to earn those achievements in order to get some victory points? You have to plan, how am I going to earn enough resources to buy that advancement that I want? Even within a single turn, you're planning, how am I going to play those cards in a way that's going to, and take those actions in an order that's going to allow me to maximize the benefit of my turn? Do I want to get involved in a battle, or is that too much of a risk? I've got to evaluate what cards are in my hand and what symbols are on those cards in my ship. You're budgeting those cargo barrels and even budgeting the cargo spaces that are in your ship. You're moving things from the island to your ship or from the warehouse to your ship or vice versa. And you also are trying to earn that. You hear the cubes rattling around in here. You're also trying to earn those coins that are going to be what determines if you win the game or not. And that's another skill here. I didn't really mention the coins very much. The coins you earn from producing on these islands or at game's end when you're counting up points from achievements go into a treasure chest. Each player has their own little treasure chest. Of course, you're a pirate. You're going to have a treasure chest. So throughout the game, your coins don't go into your warehouse. They come off your ship and go right into the treasure chest. You're not spending coins. You're just earning them. So another thing that I think you need to pay attention to in this game is how many coins are those other players earning? You have to remember what they're taking when they produce on those islands. You're not really going to know, apart from who has the most achievements at the top, who's winning the game unless you keep track of how many coins are going into those treasure chests. So there is a memory component here where you're trying to recall how many coins each player has earned throughout the game. And finally, of course, we are talking about a game that includes exploration as one of its mechanisms. And so spatially, you have to figure out, how am I going to get my ship from point A to point B? There is a visual spatial component to Dead Reckoning as well, where you're puzzling out distances and how are you going to get across the map, and honestly, where do you want to end up at the end of your turn? Normally we'd be wrapping up with the final thoughts section on these videos, but of course I've only played this game in solo mode, so really this is first impressions of Dead Reckoning. Well, as you can see from what I've shown you so far, this is a beautiful game. The components are amazing. The artwork is great. The ship where you're dropping those cubes through in order to determine who wins combat is fantastic too. So it reminded me a little bit of the Evertree from Everdell when I was putting this thing together. But this is a fantastic little thing to have at the top of the board. You've got, of course, these barrels and crates are upgraded components. In the base game, the outposts and forts are little meeples instead of these resin pieces. But the components are gorgeous. This is a game that has great table presence for sure. It's also a game that combines mechanisms from a number of games that I absolutely love. If you go back to my top 5 games video that I did earlier in the year, one of the things that's happening every turn in Dead Reckoning is that your actions are being determined by playing cards from your hand. Now, what's a game that I really like that did that? Well, Concordia is one of my favorite games of all time that is spatial and involves taking actions by playing cards and looking at the icons on those cards. There are a number of mechanisms, too, that are similar to another game I really like, Scythe. You've got end game achievements, and the end of the game is determined when a player gets to a certain number of achievements, and those are giving you victory points at the end of the game. You've got area control with areas that are going to produce resources that stay on the map until you pick them up. So resources can be stolen, and that's a mechanism that I really like in Scythe. Combat in Dead Reckoning is important, but it's not the only way to win. And you can play a game and avoid combat if you really worked at it. Maybe if you've got some other players who are more pacifistic, you can definitely play this game without getting into too many battles. And then you've got that combat that's resolved by dropping cubes into a tower, which is like Shogun, a game that I haven't played in quite some time, actually, but that's an older game that I really like, where you're dropping cubes into a tower, and that's going to determine who wins those battles. The mechanism that was really new for me was that card construction that you're doing by slotting these plastic. That's another thing I could mention here about these components. You've got the tiles that have the little cutout at the corner. That cutout is where you're placing those plastic cards. So it gives you an easy access for your fingers. It's easy to pick up these slippery plastic cards that you're sliding into those sleeves because you've got that notch in the top of each board. But constructing those cards, I think, is a really fun mechanism. And conveniently, they've put on each of these little upgraded cards, these advancements they're called, you've got a shaded in row. So there are 3 rows where you can add these abilities to your crew members, but you can only have one in the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom. So having a shaded in area on the bottom shows that, well, this ability is going to have to go at the bottom of your card. So you want to look closely. Do you have any open spaces at the bottom of your card where you can place that ability? The tower and that combat area where you're dropping those cubes does make combat fun. I really like, though, that it's not the only way to win this game. But I also like that even if you lose a battle, you could still be getting something from that combat based on where those cubes are falling. I also think it's very clever how they've set up that player board with the idea that cargo will slow your ship down or block your crew members from getting to the cannons on the sides of your ship. I think that's very clever. It makes perfect sense that if you're loaded down with cargo, your ship's not going to go as fast. And so that necessity of moving things around before a battle, or if you want your ship to move fast, making sure that you're not covering up too many of those sailing icons with your cargo crates. I think that's a fun mechanism as well. So it's a game that combines parts of lots of other games that I really like into an experience that was unique, at least for me. I haven't played a game like this. I haven't played a game anything like this in a long time. It's been a while since I played a 4X game at all. It's hard for me to talk about downsides since this is just first impressions. It is a complex game, so it may be heavy for some players. I played it only solo. I think 3 players would be a really great number for this game. So 4 players, it might slow things down a bit. You might find yourself waiting for your turn a little bit longer, but 3 players is a great number where you've got enough interaction. There's 3 ships on the board instead of just 2, but you're not going to get bogged down too much. It's, as I said, a complex game with lots of icons and symbols. The rule book makes it really easy, and there's a symbol or an icon glossary at the end of the rule book. The only one that the only symbols I found complicated, where I had to keep going back to the rule book over and over again, were these ones at the top. The symbols for the achievements, because you're not using those every turn. They're not on your card where you're going to keep seeing them over and over again. You have to keep track of when you are meeting the criteria for these things. So what does it mean when you've got a cube and an infinity symbol? Now I've gotten used to it a bit, and so most of them I can remember now. I had to think about this cube one even for a minute, but most of them I think I can remember now. But this was the biggest sticking point that had me going back to the rule book and again. So I mean, really, not a major impediment to enjoying this game, because this was a fantastic game. I had a lot of fun. Would I play it solo again? I'm not really a solo game player, so setting up a whole game may not be something that I would do very often. But I know that my friends have seen pictures of this game set up, and they're all saying the same thing. Like, when can we play this? I really want to try out this game, and it is a really great game. And once you get used to those icons, it does go fairly quickly. So I think AEG has hit it out of the park with this one, just based on those first impressions. I am going to play again with larger play counts. Please let me know if you want a more in-depth video than this one in the comment section below the video. Or, of course, you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.